2 years ago, I'd never heard of the Aspen Literary Awards. Today, it is one of my absolute favourite book prizes. And it's done that by consistently long-listing good books. Shocking tactic, I know. Roddy Doyle, please take note. Sorry, that dig was a little bit petty, unprofessional, and completely uncalled for. I'm rather proud of that one myself. Back to the business of this video. The Aspen Literary Awards seeks to promote influential works of fiction that illuminate vital contemporary social issues. And last week, the 2026 Longlist was announced. And I did just say 2026 because it takes 6 months to go from Longlist to winner, which is a lovely, stress-free timeline, allowing everybody plenty of time to read the 15 books. A short list of 5 books will come out on the 11th of May. The winner will be announced on the 23rd of April. And today's video, we're just highlighting those 15 books. Now, I've read 5 of them. I'll give you my opinion on those books. Look, if you've watched my review of the Booker Prize, you'll know I'm not one of those reviewers who are positive about every book they read. I do give my reviews warts and all. But spoiler alert, everything I have to say about the 5 books I've read is all pretty positive, although definitely some of it is more positive than others. Alright, let's discuss the books. The True Story of Raja the Gullible and His Mother by Rabid Alameddin. In a tiny Beirut apartment, 63-year-old Raja and his mother live side by side, a beloved high school philosophy teacher and the neighbourhood homosexual. Raja relishes books, meditative walks, order and solitude. Zafar, his octogenarian mother, views his son's privacy as a personal affront. She craves nothing more than to know the ins and outs of Raja's work life and his love life. Boundaries be damned. When Raja receives an invitation to an all-expense-paid writing residency in America, the timing couldn't be better. It arrives on the heels of a series of personal and national disasters that have left Raja itching for peace and quiet away from his mother and the heartache of Lebanon. But what at first seems a stroke of good fortune soon leads Raja to recount and relive the very disasters and past betrayals he wishes to leave behind. Wickedly funny, heartbreaking, and told in Raja's irresistible voice, the true story of Raja the Guilty dances across 6 decades to tell the unforgettable story of a singular life and its absurdities. A tale of mistakes, self-discovery, trauma, and maybe even forgiveness. Above all, it's a wild and sparkling celebration of love. I am one of the few people who didn't enjoy this author's last book, An Unnecessary Woman, but that description sounds right up my alley, and I'd definitely be happy to give him a second try. This book is everywhere right now, and it's getting a lot of hype. That's not always a good thing, but it's certainly not always a bad thing either. King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. Roman Carruthers left the smoke and fire of his family's crematorium business behind in his hometown of Jefferson Run, Virginia. He is enjoying a life of shallow excess as a financial advisor in Atlanta until he gets a call from his sister, Neva, telling him their father is in a coma after a hit-and-run accident. When Roman goes home, he learns the accident may not have been what it seems. His brother Dante is deeply in debt to dangerous, ruthless criminals, and Roman is willing to do anything to protect his family. Anything. A financial whiz with a head for numbers and a talent for making his clients rich, Roman must use his skills to try and save his family while dealing with a shadow that has haunted them all for 20 years, the disappearance of their mother when Roman and his siblings were teenagers. It's a mystery that Neva, who has sacrificed so much of her life to hold her family together, is determined to solve once and for all. As fate and chance and heartache ignite their life, the family must pull together to survive or see their lives turn to ash. Because, as their father cancelled them from birth, nothing lasts forever. Everything burns. I'm a bit surprised to see S.A. Cosby on this list. It's fair to say that his books are not marketed towards people with my taste in literature. I see praise from people like Michael Connelly, Lee Child, and Stephen King, and I just want to run. But some of my favourite books are also crime fiction. For example, I really adore A Brief History of 7 Killings. Sometimes the markers, they simplify things. They aim at singular audiences. They aim at large audiences and not at everybody. So I'm willing to give this a chance. Frankly, it sounds like it's got a really good plot. It sounds like it will be entertaining and a little bit fun to read at the very least. It might not be my favourite book of the year, but maybe it's a good one to read in between other books. It's a weird statement, actually. Don't we read every book in between other books? But I think you know what I mean. It's a change of pace book. The Wilderness by Angela Flanoy. Desiree, January, Monique, and Nikita are in their early 20s at the beginning of their careers, of marriage, of motherhood, and of big city lives in New York and Los Angeles. Together, they are finding their way through the wilderness, that period of life when the realities of contemporary adulthood, overwhelming, mysterious, and full of freedom and consequences, swoop in and stay. Desiree is estranged from her sister Danielle, and the two nurse bitter family wounds in different ways. January's got a relationship with a good man she feels ambivalent about, even after her surprise pregnancy. Monique, a librarian and aspiring blogger, finds unexpected online fame after calling out the university where she works for its plans to whitewash fraught history. And Nikita is trying to get her restaurant off the ground without relying on the largesse of her upper middle class family, who wonder aloud if she should be doing something better with her life. As these friends move from the late 2000s to the late 2020s, from young adults to grown women, they must figure out what they mean to one another amid political upheaval, economic and environmental instability, and the increasing volatility of modern American life. Definitely one of these books I could see going either way, but I love the inclusion of a university library whitewashing their history and their books. There are like two potential issues I see here. The current pressures libraries face from an ever-increasing number of people that think they can get books banned or removed from libraries. And then the reality that libraries both buy books and therefore have to weed books from their selection to make space for those new books. And that often comes with a little bit of a cost. Often books that are written by minority authors are less popular, and when you are weeding books in a library, you look at how popular the book is when you get rid of it, and this can create a little bit of a feedback system. And people working in libraries, especially those managing the collection, have to be very conscious of that, and it's very easy to have quite a non-inclusive collection because of that. Anyway, I figure if you're watching this video, you're probably a book nerd, and including book issues in a novel is always going to be of interest to us. That's why so many characters in books are avid readers, are writers, are librarians, are book adjacent in some way. Culpability by Bruce Holsinger. When the Cassidy Shores autonomous minivan collides with an oncoming car, 17-year-old Charlie is in the driver's seat, his father Noah riding shotgun. In the back seat, tweens Alice and Izzy are on their phone, while their mother Lorelei, a world leader in the field of artificial intelligence, is absorbed in her work. Yet each family member harbours a secret that implicates them in the accident. During a week-long recuperation, the family confronts the excruciating moral dilemmas triggered by the clash. Noah tries to hold the family together as a seemingly routine police investigation jeopardizes Charlie's future. Alice and Izzy turn strangely furtive, and Lorelei's odd behaviour tugs at Noah's suspicion that there is a darker truth behind the incident. Suspicion heightened by the sudden intrusion of Daniel Moe, a tech mogul whose mysterious history with Lorelei hints at betrayal. When Charlie falls for Monet's teenage daughter, the stakes are raised even higher in this propulsive family drama that's also a fascinating exploration of the moral responsibilities and ethical conquests of AI. This sounds exactly like the kind of book that I'm very excited to read right now, but in 5 years' time, I'm going to be sick of reading about. AI is the COVID of 2025, isn't it? I'm excited that this novel promises to focus on family dynamics as well. I think issues are far more richer when they're explored in relation to people's lives and the impacts they have on normal everyday folk. In Temperance by Sonora Ja. A middle-aged woman starts a firestorm when she holds a contest based on an ancient Indian ritual in which men must compete to win her affection. A woman who has left 2 husbands announces she will celebrate her 55th birthday by holding a swayamvra. Drawn from an ancient custom in her Indian culture, this is an event in which suitors line up to compete in a feat of will and strength to win the beautiful princess's hand in marriage. The woman, a renowned and respected intellectual in an American town, who had once declared that she was past such petty matters as love, is setting herself up for widespread social ridicule. But her self-esteem and sexual libido are off the charts, even as her body withered from disabilities, fading beauty, and an appetite for cake. I enjoyed this very feminist novel exploring how different views around women, their roles and sexuality create conflict and dysfunction. I really enjoyed that there were some very introductory feminist themes in there, but also some more complex conversations about feminism being used to control women's choices, as well as men trying to control women's choices, and this idea of what women should be versus autonomy for their own decisions. There's also this discussion of traditional and modern values clashing as we look at how globalization is causing those conflicts of opinion and how we must navigate them. But all of these themes come back to the role of women and how they are viewed and treated in society. I just thought that this book had such a unique take on this conversation. I think feminist novels have been around for a while, so it's good to see something new come out. The River is Waiting by Wally Lamb. Corby Ledbetter is struggling. New fatherhood, the loss of his job, and a growing secret addiction have thrown his marriage to the beloved Emily into a tailspin, and that's before he causes the tragedy that tears his family apart. Sentenced to prison, Corby struggles to survive life on the inside, where he bears witness to frightful acts of brutality, but also experiences small acts of kindness and elemental kinship with a prison librarian who sees his light and some of his fellow offenders, including a tender-hearted cellmate and a struggled teen desperate for a role model. Buoyed by them and his mother's enduring faith in him, Corby begins to transcend the boundaries of his confinement, sustained by his hope that mercy and reconciliation might still be possible. Can his crimes ever be forgiven by those he loves? I do like a book with a librarian in it. I think as a society, prison is a topic we really need to have a long, hard discussion about. I think it's used as a punishment instead of a way of keeping populations safe from dangerous people. It's exploited by companies as profit, and it carries such horrible stigma for people who are in there or get out of there, and the sentencing just seems to be quite random to me. So it's always good to have a book discussing those issues, but this book sounds like it's all about forgiveness. But the thing that is really getting me interested in this novel are the reviews of it, because they are almost all either 5-star reviews or 1-star reviews, and that is a tempting book right there. I mean, maybe I'm just a bit of a shit, or does everybody look at a book that is upsetting a bunch of people and think, yes, I clearly need to read that? The evidence suggests that this one is a real love it or hate it novel, and I wonder which camp I will be in at the end of the book. Ring by Michelle Lerner. Ring takes you on an unforgettable odyssey through the depth of human emotion, from the hollows of grief to the heights of newfound hope, in the backdrop of a snow-covered sanctuary designed to aid the dying. Lee, a middle-aged non-binary person from the Midwest, grapples with the unbearable weight of losing their young adult daughter, abandoning their previous life and even that comfort of a long-time spouse. Lee is driven by a quest for closure or an end to it all. Enter Ring, a seemingly ordinary dog with an extraordinary role. Bought by Robert, a terminally ill man prepared to make his final walk through the sanctuary's 7 pillars. Ring becomes the catalyst for Lee's own rebirth. As Lee befriends other souls at the sanctuary, each embroiled in their own battle, from Catherine to Samu, the spiritual leader, to Viviana, a war veteran, scarred by trauma. They are nudged towards a revelation that changes their initial reason for coming to this remote haven. The novel deftly weaves the themes of hope, loss and healing set against the spiritually infused environment of the sanctuary. It presents a compassionate view on suicide, grappling with the complex questions it raises about the values of sanctity of life. As Lee engages with mindfulness practice and meditation, the story emerges as an enlightening guide for anybody walking the line between despair and help. Never heard of this title before, but it sounds very promising, and it has a dog in it. I think that the topic of assisted suicide, voluntary suicide, choosing when to end one's own life is such a complex issue that is often, simplified by both sides. It's such a tragic issue. Books about that are always very emotional, and I think this one sounds like a potential very good book. Also, is it just me, or are there subtle references to Dante's Inferno or Dante's Divine Comedy through that description? Maybe I'm putting 2 and 2 together and making Elephant. I don't know. A Family Matter by Claire Lynch, 1982. Dawn is a young mother, still adjusting to life with her husband when Hazel lights up her world like a torch in the dark. Theirs is the kind of connection that's impossible to resist, and suddenly life is more complicated and more joyful than Dawn ever expected. But she has responsibilities and commitments. She has a daughter. 2022. Heron has just received news from his doctor that turns everything upside down. He is an older man, stuck in the habit of a quiet existence, telling Maggie, his only child, the person around whom his life has revolved, seems impossible. Heron can't tell her about his diagnosis, just as he can't reveal all the other secrets he's been keeping from her for so many years. This is one of my favourite books of the year. Some books focus on a single issue, and those books can be great. This book, however, focuses on a few issues. We have terminal illness, we have single parenthood, we have coming out as LGBT after one is married. And I feel like that is more realistic and consistent with the human experience. None of us live simple lives with one thing solely complicating it. Our lives are complicated by lots of different things. And yes, the queer character is not the terminally ill character, and neither are the child with only one parent. But they're all connected, and reactions to one event impact the next event, and they spill into each other in unexpected ways. And that is what makes a complex novel really interesting. I love how the intersection of issues that you don't consider can be discussed in these very human books, and that is something this book does. I also really love the recognition of how homophobia has changed over 40 years, and how reasonable people in the 80s were influenced towards an intolerant point of view by their situation, and that is something that can be applied to people today in a different way, with different issues, with anything. It's such strong character work, and this is the kind of book that you just start to invest in and you don't want to put down. A really, really good book. Wild Dark Shores by Charlotte McConaughey. A family on a remote island, a mysterious woman washed ashores, a rising storm on the horizon. Dominic Salt and his 3 children are caretakers of Shearwater, a tiny island not far from Antarctica. Home to the world's largest seed bank, Shearwater was once full of researchers, but with sea levels rising, the Salts are now the final inhabitants. Until during the worst storm the island has ever seen, a woman mysteriously washes ashore. Isolation has taken its toll on the Salts, but as they nurse the woman, Rowan, back to strength, it begins to feel like she might be just what they need. Rowan, long accustomed to protecting herself, starts imagining a future where she could belong to somebody again. But Rowan isn't telling the whole truth about why she set out for Shearwater, and when she discovers sabotaged radio and freshly dug graves, she realizes Dominic is keeping his own secrets. As the storms in Shearwater gather force, they must all decide if they can trust each other enough to protect the precious seeds in their care before it is too late, and if they can finally put the tragedy of the past behind them to create something new together. A novel of breathtaking twists, dizzying beauty, and ferocious love. Wild Dark Shore is about the impossible choices we make to protect the people we love, even as the world around us disappears. Yay, an Aussie author. Unfortunately for Charlotte McConaughey, this is probably the weakest book on the long list that I have read, but it's still an enjoyable book, and it's the setting that makes this book really good. There's been a few novels set on really isolated islands recently, and I think it really adds something to this discussion. We have children bonding with seals and other marine animals in this book as friends or companions, and I just think that is really interesting. Do we need human or Homo sapien connections, or will animal connections fill our social needs? Dog owners live for longer, and it's suspected that carries over to cat owners and other pets. Although research and evidence for this is still pending, so buy a dog, don't buy a cat. They're a better pet anyway. Unfortunately, this discussion is not the central tendency of this novel, and I think that probably sums up my feelings towards this book. I remember fondly this little side theme that I am discussing now, but I really struggled to reflect on what the central themes were. Still, I liked reading this at the time. These by Mia Mackenzie. Where do you get an abortion in 1960s Georgia, especially if your small town midwife goes to the same church as your parents? For 17-year-old Doris Steele, the answer is Atlanta, with her favourite teacher, Miss Lucas, who calls upon her brash, wealthy childhood best friend, Sylvia, for help. While waiting to hear from the doctor who has agreed to do the procedure, Doris spends the weekend scandalised by, but drawn to, the people who move in and out of Sylvia's celebrity, whom Doris has seen on the pages of Jet and Ebony, civil rights leaders such as Coretta Scott King and Diane Nash, women who dance close together, boys who flirt too hard and talk too much, atheists, and even more shocking, Mrs. Lucas seems to be right at home. For the guests at the queer kickback to the student activists at the SNCC conference, Doris suddenly finds herself surrounded by so many people who seem to know exactly who or what they want. Doris knows she doesn't want a baby, but what does she want? Will this trip help her find out? I read this book with my Patreons a few months ago, so this seems like the best time to shout out them for their wonderful support and give them a big thank you. If you would like to support this channel and read books like this with me and a great collection of people, we do a little video chat after we've all read the books. The link is in the description. For me, I think it's a really solid, enjoyable read. At times it was funny, at times it was tense, at times I was empathizing with the characters, and at times I was just thinking about things and themes, and I don't feel like any of those aspects overshadowed or took away from the others. So it's a really well-rounded novel in my head. Maybe there were a few too many coincidences in the book. Maybe there were a few too many things happening in a weekend, but I passed those things off as the premise for the novel. And in the end, I just found this a very, very easy novel to like and enjoy. Happy Land by Dolene Perkins Valdez. In the hills of Appalachia, there once existed a land ruled by king and queen, inspired by memories of African kingdoms. A community of formerly enslaved men and women grasped freedom on mountain land they own. But freedom doesn't always last forever. Today, after years of silence, Nikki has been summoned to North Carolina by her estranged grandmother. But instead of revealing answers to their past, Mother Rita tells Nikki a shocking story about her great-great-great-grandmother, Queen Luella, and the very land they stand on. Land, Mother Rita insists, must be protected at all cost. As Nikki learns about the kingdom of the Happy Land, she comes to realize how much of her identity is rooted in this family land and how much they stand to lose if it, like so much else, is taken from them. It's time to reclaim what is theirs. Perkins Valdez's last novel was Take My Hand, which is a book I haven't read, and just like this book, it sounds like a book I would really like, but I just don't get the vibes off the cover that it's my sort of book. It's definitely not marketed towards me, and it's just that old adage, don't judge a book by its cover, which is clearly some wisdom that came about from the absolutely horrid and abysmal covers we had from the 1930s to the 1980s. But today, marketers know what they're doing. These are good covers, but these are covers that communicate to readers what sort of genre it is, who it's aimed at. That's what marketers do. That's what covers do. And I just wonder if Perkins Valdez is pigeoned into a smaller market than she is writing to. But also, it's not like I don't enjoy historical fiction. It's not like this doesn't sound like a me book. This sounds like a really right up my alley book. I'm literally judging it by a cover. So it's probably time to actually give her a shot and ignore the cover of a book. This here is Love by Princess Joy L. Perry. 3 people, 2 enslaved, 1 indentured, live beside each other, fighting and sometimes failing to be more than their pasts say they should be. 1690s, Tidewater, Virginia. Bless, born into slavery and taken by her master to toil in the house, faces her mother's fury, learning that cruelty can come from any side. David, an enslaved child of a freed father, dreams of the promise of liberty made to him. Jack, an impoverished Scots-Irish boy, sails to America to be indentured, but in the hellish crossing finds his hope fracturing. Yet somehow they're all willing to stake a claim to love. Princess Joy L. Perry tells a previously unheard story, one in which characters must carve out choices from the narrowest of circumstances and confront heart-renderings. How far do you go to protect your children from enslavement? How do you create a lasting family after being torn from your own? What to value, a hard-won opportunity or your humanity? This Here Is Love is an unforgettable story from an astonishing new voice. I feel like I've said this a couple of times in this video. Sounds good. I'm not sure it's marketed to me. And you know, that's all I usually need to hesitate on reading a book. There are so many good books out there. I can't read them all. You want to tell me that book's not for me in any way, shape or form? I'm going to listen to it. But that is one thing I really enjoy about this long list. Because, you know, if that book had a Litfic cover, I'd be reading it ASAP. And reading something on the cusps of my taste, you know, acknowledging that I like other genres too and indulging in them, and who knows, probably finding quite a great deal of literary merit in them too. Ooh, knocked the computer there. You know, I'm hoping that this book makes a mockery of my little cover theory and lets me know that I should stop avoiding books when the premise sounds good. Endlings by Maria Riva. Ukraine, 2020. Yiva is a loner, a maverick biologist who lives out of her mobile lab. She scours the country's forests and valleys, trying and failing to breed rare snails, while her relatives urge her to give up, settle down, and start a family. What they don't know, Yiva already dates plenty of men, but not for love, to fund her work. Entertaining Westerners who come to the Ukraine on guided romance tours, believing that they'll find docile brides uninfluenced by feminism and modernity. Natsia and her sister Solomia are also entangled in the booming marriage industry, posing as a beautiful bride and her translator while secretly searching for their missing mother, a flamboyant protester who vanished after years of fierce activism against the romance tours. So begins a journey of a lifetime across hundreds of miles. 3 angry women, a truck full of kidnapped bachelors, and Lefty, a last of his kind snails with one final shot at perpetuating his species. But their plan comes to a screeching halt as Russia invades. This is another book I read with my Patreons, but if you've not heard of this book by now, it is one of those rare books that is getting a lot of hype. But that hype is well and truly correct and justified. This is a great book. I love the conversation around bias, disinformation, and misinformation in this book. It is so relevant today. As a small-time YouTuber, I kind of wonder if I say something silly like eating 12 snails a day is responsible for me keeping all of my hair. Every morning I blend them up with kale, hemp seed, and plant-based collagen, because I'm a vegan, and I have it for breakfast in a smoothie. And I wonder, if I said that, would people believe me? Would people start blending snails into their smoothies? I mean, hopefully not. I'd like to think that my audience is informed and critical thinkers who don't take everything I say as gospel. But then again, today I did read a credible news journal stating that the president of the largest and most powerful country in the world may have engaged in a sexual act with a equine creature. And I just wonder, what is the media coming to? Still, I guess I did click on that article and read it, so that's what it's coming to. Anyway, I feel like I've gotten somewhat off topic with this book, and that's kind of what this book does. It sparks ideas and conversations, and you want to explore them as much as you want to keep reading this book. This is really good brain exercise. It inspires you to think. Behind the Waterline by Kawana Walker Lamali. Behind the Waterline takes readers to the home of a teenager and his grandmother in a New Orleans neighborhood on the eve of Katrina, where there are few resources and little warning of what is about to happen in this novel that mixes magical realism with reality. When Hurricane Katrina approaches New Orleans, teenager Eric and his grandmother and many of their neighbours decide to ride out the storm. Kawana Walker Lamali's masterful debut novel brings her reader, like the rising water, onto Eric's street in the 3rd Ward, where stranded dogs bark for a time, where neighbours are floating on doors, and where Eric and his grandmother must take refuge in the 2nd floor bedroom. After days of heat, dwindling supplies, and relentless rising water, neighbours begin to disappear, and Eric's grandmother, already known as an eccentric, begins to falter. It is then that Eric, in a dream, a hallucination, or something else, discovers a room beyond his closeted wall, a place he has never seen. What he discovers inside will send him on a path to discover the secrets to survival, bitter progress, and ultimately the history of his own people, those he sorely misses and those he never knew. This book won the Lee Smith Novel Prize, which, to be honest, I didn't know about until I saw it researching this video, but apparently it is a book prize for the best book from the United States of America, from the south of the USA, which I think is a very strong region for literary talent. It sounds like a cracker of a novel, to be honest, although I do see those two words that are my bookish kryptonite: magical realism. But this novel does sound like it is on the lighter side of that and not the wackadoodle what's going on side of that. I'm always very hopeful when I see a debut author on any long list, and this is no exception. Definitely one of the riskier novels on the long list for me, but also one of the novels with the highest potential. So Far Gone by Jess Walter. Rhys Kidnack has gone off the grid. At Thanksgiving a few years back, a fed-up Rhys punched his conspiracy theorist son-in-law in the mouth, chucked his smartphone out of a car window, and fled for a cabin in the woods, with no one around except a pack of hungry raccoons. Now Kidnick's old life is about to land right back on his crumbling doorstep. Can this failed husband and father, a man with no internet and a car that barely runs, re-emerge into a broken world to track down his missing daughter and save his sweet, precious grandchild from the members of a dangerous militia? With the help of his caustic ex-girlfriend, a bipolar retired detective, and his old friend who happens to be furious at him, Kidnick heads off on a wild journey through cultural lunacy and the rubbles of a life he thought he'd left behind. Well, I mean, this novel sounds weird, and to be honest, I'm slightly worried about it. But it also sounds like it has the potential to be hilarious. And after all, who hasn't wanted to punch a right-wing conspiracy theorist in the face from time to time? I mean, I probably wouldn't do it because I don't think violence is a very good thing. But as a literary representation of the frustration that one experiences talking to somebody like that well, then I can definitely forgive that appearing on the page. Also, I did use the word talking in there, and let's face it, that's very loose. You don't really talk to them as have to listen to their lectures that are not well formed. To be honest, I wouldn't pick this one up if it weren't on this long list, but there is some book prize trust here. I can see this being either a good or a bad book, and I'm going to listen to the prize and hope that I agree with them. That is the 15 books long listed. Personally, 2 books that I think are absolutely amazing, 2 books I rate very highly, 1 book that I enjoyed, and 10 new books for my TBR. I'm going to scatter my reading of those 10 books over the next 5 or 6 months. I'm not going to read them as a big block, but I'm going to make sure I get all 15 read before the pointy end of this book prize. But I would love to ask you, what have you read from this long list and what do you think? Let me know in the comments what you think of any of the books, good, bad, or otherwise. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye bye.